let me just tell you, some fanfiction out there, not the best. Some others, really great. Majority, great. Some of them are bad. That's just it. In every single group, in every single activity that you do, there's always one thing, one person, one group. It's like the minority of that group that does terrible things, and then it kind of influences the rest of the group in a negative light. So in this case, some fan fictions out there are gross. Some of them aren't tagged properly. Some of them can be uh, disturbing to read. And because of that, fanfiction gets like this negative light that people who read fanfiction are gross and should be ashamed of themselves. And personally, I mean, I can't be the only one who's felt like this before, but I read fanfiction all the time and I really like it. I like the characters and development. But whenever I was reading it, like publicly, like on the bus or even on my laptop, I always hide it away from people I don't want them to see, or I like close my phone, all this stuff, just because I internalized it and I'm like, well, maybe fanfic is something negative, like we shouldn't enjoy it. But that's not true. And today I'm here to tell you why it's great to read fan fiction and why it's great to be a part of it and why it's good to really be creative. But before we get into like why fan fiction is great and before I start praising it, let's talk about the two different types of fan fiction. And I've kind of placed them into two different categories. We have reality fan fiction and fictional fan fiction. So you're probably thinking, like, how could there be two different types of fan fiction? Well, just wait. So, reality fan fiction, or I guess you can call it real or fake fan fiction. So, real fan fiction incorporates real people, like actual people, while fictional fan fiction incorporates books, movies, characters, and other things like that. So, reality fan fiction incorporates real people, they're using their real name, maybe their job, their location, that stuff I personally don't think should be a part of fan fiction because at that point, like you're just living out the person. Like I understand why people do it. It's more so that they relate to this person, so they're right about that person in their own light. However, like we need to make a distinction here that fan fiction is not real people. It's either characters or personas or fictional characters. There is no real life people being hurt. It can involve situations that are real to the author, it can be real life situations, but the actual characters themselves don't exist, if that makes sense. They can be emulated based on somebody, they can act like somebody, but in reality, they're not that person. I think that's the distinction here. A lot of the times, people will say that, writing fanfiction about other people, real life people, is wrong. And yes, that is wrong. You can't. I don't think anybody wants to read a fanfiction about themselves. Like, it makes them feel uncomfortable. To an extent, like, these are public figures and they have fans. And fans are going to relate to them, connect to them, try to understand them. Like they're going to try to make efforts to be more like them or be around them or write about them. Like writing is a natural thing that people do. It's a way to express yourself, and sometimes people choose actual people to write about. So to that extent, I understand why people do it. I don't agree with it because, eh, especially I agree with it to an extent where it's tasteful, like to uplift people, real life people, not to demean them or to hurt them or to put them in situations, nothing like that, just uplifting. It sounds good. That's like an aspect of it, that people are using real people and then it makes the other person feel uncomfortable. And so the majority of the case though, like people don't write about other people, like it's mainly fictional characters because everyone understands that it's not like people will write about real life people. The majority of fanfics actually don't write real people, or if they do, it's more like their persona, their character, their actor. There's not really them, it's just the way that they present themselves to the audience. So in that case, I think it's fine to use them because you're not really affecting them in any way. You're taking the character and incorporating the character. Right. But still be tasteful with the stuff. Because at the end of the day, fictional characters and real life people are different. You can do things with fictional characters because they don't really exist, and real life people do. So bear in mind that. Moving on to why some other negative things about fanfiction, or the reason why people don't like it as much, I think it's mainly because of this like stereotype that everyone who reads fanfiction who likes it is kind of crazy in a way, that we're the moral that we just write about. I don't know how to phrase this correctly, but people who always are doing 18 plus activities together, something like that, that we're like constantly, we're obsessed with it, we're obsessed with shipping people, we ship everybody together, we won't shut up about this fandom, we won't shut up about these readings, we won't all this stuff. And at the end of the day, people who write about characters and things, it's not, they're not writing it to be inherently mean about a person or situation. It's just an expression of themselves, like how they're feeling. For example, people who like fanfiction, who read fanfiction, who write fanfiction, normally aren't looking. Well, I mean, so some people do look for the 18 plus whatever content, and that's fine, okay? Because if they are 18 plus, or if they're watching it or reading it, they make that decision for themselves. I'm not, no one can tell them not that they can't read or they can't read this material. Even on websites that use that type of content, that's always restricted. You have to click, you have to agree, you have to give your consent to the fact that you might be introduced to this stuff. Some fanfic readers, writers, whatever, do incorporate like 18 plus material, and that's totally fine to do. It's as long as it's two like consenting adults participating with each other, or it's a different consensual activity, like that's fine. So there are some fanfictions out there that do this type of stuff, and that's normally what people see when they first go onto the page, and then they have this terrible idea of fanfic, and then it's like, oh my god. But but truly, like a lot of the fanfics are kind of like novels. I read one and I'm like, this is like a book. Like if they published it, I'm sure, or changed the name. Like some of the fanfictions are crazy because they just use the same archetypes of characters, change, and if they change the names and put a different name in it, completely, this could be a book. Like it's a book. And I feel like those types of people who put so much effort into writing and so much effort into doing the work are kind of being diminished. That doesn't seem correct to me at all. And another thing with this whole like fanfiction is good. Let's go into this, okay? Fanfiction is an expression of how you are feeling, of how you are, about how you perceive the world. It's kind of like you're writing your life. Now bear with me. Sometimes not the case, but inspiration hits people differently, and a lot of times we get ideas to be creative based on our real life events or experiences, and writing about them is therapeutic in that sense. And they're talking about their experience with it, and this is how they feel safe to talk about their issues. And it's just personal to me because I feel like I've done the same thing. Like everyone who writes knows this. We write about how we feel about everything because it makes us feel better. It's kind of like we have someone to talk to. It makes me sad when people say that fanfiction is just shameful or, I don't know, disgusting or gross, because it's not. Like people use characters, yes, but those are characters and they relate to that character so much, or they can use that character as a way to fully like accept themselves and their past. I just don't want people to feel ashamed of reading it. I don't want people to go into the world thinking, I can't express how I feel creatively because if I do so, I'm going to be called like I have to be ashamed of the way that I express who I am. I think that's the great thing about fanfiction is that there is no limits, you know? Like it's limitless in the possibilities. Like you could read one that makes you cry and another one that makes you laugh. You can experience all these beautiful emotions. It's okay to want to like read about it. Like that's fine to understand healthy relationships, understand boundaries, to understand consent. Like these are topics that are covered in fan fiction a lot of the time. It's always about how important it is, and it teaches you things. Reading it is totally fine. You shouldn't be ashamed of what you want to read. If I had somebody tell me this when I was younger, I would feel a lot better about myself now. To know that you're not the only person. Like there's tons of people, so many people who read it, like tens of thousands. So many people who enjoy it, enjoy being part of fandoms, enjoy having a community, enjoy expressing themselves, will support you. It's just nice to hear reassurance, especially when people, this is their only outlet to really write about. I don't even know how to end that. That was a lot. Okay, let's just end it on. I think I've explained to you why reading fanfiction is great, why some people can perceive it negatively, and why you shouldn't let that kind of bring you down. Because at the end of the day, like, you are allowed to do what you wanted to do.